Jason Harper's the reason we closed the deal. Visionary leadership, brilliant execution, Carla said, loud enough for the entire boardroom to hear. My heart stopped mid-beat. I had built that pitch. I led the market analysis, created the financial forecasts, and coached the client through every objection. But now, in front of Titanova's executive team, Carla Nguyen, my ambitious colleague, was giving credit to a man who'd ghosted half the meetings and offered nothing but recycled jargon. My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. The meeting adjourned to polite applause. Carla beamed. I sat frozen, heat crawling up my neck like shame. As people filtered out, Monica Reynolds, our chief strategy officer, paused beside me. "We'll talk later," she said quietly, eyes narrowing toward Carla. That wasn't right. But damage had already been done. Back at my desk, I stared blankly at my screen, rage and helplessness twisting inside me. This wasn't new. Being overlooked was practically a reflex now. At work, at home, especially around Jason. My older brother had spent his life soaking up the spotlight while I operated in the margins. Childhood science fairs? He'd be building AI chess bots while I won business plan competitions no one cared about. College? He went to MIT on a partial scholarship for computer science. I went to UW for business, and he laughed when I told him. Marketing, huh? He smirked at graduation. Guess someone's got to make the brochures. I'd swallowed that insult like I'd swallowed every other one. I was used to it. Even now, despite being director of strategic acquisitions at one of the fastest growing tech firms in the country, my family still introduced me as Jason's little sister, the one in, what, sales? Only Grandma Eleanor understood. A former math professor with sharper instincts than half the VCs in Silicon Valley, she always said, "They won't see you coming until it's too late." Today, she might have been right. A fresh acquisition packet had landed on my desk minutes ago. A potential target. Small team, promising machine learning patents, but hemorrhaging capital. I skimmed the executive summary, expecting another underfunded dreamer with good tech and no strategy, until I reached the founder's name, Jason Harper. My fingers froze over the keyboard. I double-checked. Founder and CEO, Jason Harper. The same Jason who'd bragged over Thanksgiving dinner that his startup, Nexora Labs, was being courted by investors left and right. The same Jason who insisted he was weeks away from a Series B. He had no idea his company was sitting on my desk as a potential rescue target. My stomach turned. This was a conflict of interest, an obvious one. I should have flagged it, handed it off to Parker on my team, and recused myself. But instead, I opened the financials. Cash reserves, critically low. Revenue, underwhelming. Burn rate, suicidal. User retention, dismal. The tech was solid. I'd give him that. Their machine learning algorithm had real merit. But the business? It was a slow-motion collapse. He had overspent on branding, ignored customer feedback, and treated marketing like an afterthought. Classic Jason. For years, I'd endured his smug superiority. At family dinners, he'd drop phrases like neural net inference latency just to kill the conversation, then turn to me and say, "Don't worry, Bree, this is high-level stuff." Everyone would laugh, even Mom. Now, fate had handed me the truth on a silver platter. I stood up, still gripping the folder, and walked straight to Monica's office. "I need to disclose something," I said the moment she looked up. "One of our acquisition targets is my brother." Monica raised a brow. "The Nexora guy?" I nodded. She leaned back in her chair, silent for a beat. Damn. "I won't be involved in negotiations," I added quickly. "But I think the tech's worth saving. I know how he builds." She studied me carefully. "You sure you can stay neutral?" "I'm sure I've been underestimated long enough," Monica smirked. "All right. Advisory only. Keep it clean, Harper." The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in restraint. I stayed behind the scenes, advising the team, monitoring due diligence. Parker handled comms. Our legal lead reviewed every move. At home, Jason was still oblivious. During a family Zoom, he hijacked the call to boast about his exit strategy. I almost laughed. The irony was exquisite. Easter Sunday came like a slow-moving earthquake. I arrived at my parents' house with Michael, my boyfriend, who squeezed my hand as we stepped inside. You've done nothing wrong, he whispered. You're allowed to take up space. Jason was already holding court in the living room, retelling his deal of the decade to Dad and Uncle Ray. Heather, his wife, sat quietly beside him. She smiled when she saw me, always polite, always gracious. Brianna, she called, getting up to hug me. It's been too long. Jason glanced over. Oh, hey, sis. Still working for that big corporate place? Titan Nova, I replied. He grinned smugly. Right. Anyway, so as I was saying, I timed the exit perfectly. Sold just before the market correction. Classic founder intuition. I said nothing. I didn't need to. Dinner began. Dishes passed. Small talk floated. Then Aunt Marla lifted her glass. To success, she toasted. To timing, Jason added, raising his glass higher. To truth, said Grandma Eleanor, calm and steady. Then she turned to Jason. Is that why your sister's company bought yours, dear? Because your timing was just that good? Silence slammed the table like a dropped plate. Jason blinked. What are you talking about? Grandma took a sip of water. Titanova acquired Nexora, didn't they? That's Brianna's team, isn't it? Jason turned pale, and I smiled. For once, unapologetically. If you've ever been overlooked despite working twice as hard, type 1. The second I stepped out of the dining room, my phone buzzed with a high-priority alert from Titanova's internal communications. Nexora acquisition approval, final round cleared, legal preparing press release. I barely had time to react before another message popped up. From Parker. Heads up, someone tried to leak our involvement to the press. Monica is furious. Carla might be behind it. My stomach clenched. Carla again. She must have caught wind of my connection to Jason and assumed she could use it to sabotage me. Maybe she hoped to frame it as nepotism, or worse, corporate manipulation. I shoved my phone into my pocket just as Jason stormed out of the dining room. His face was tight, his posture rigid. He made a beeline for the porch, barely noticing me until I followed him out. He didn't look at me, just muttered, "You planned this." I leaned against the railing, trying to stay calm. Planned what? You knew my company was struggling. You saw an opportunity to swoop in and humiliate me. I shook my head. I didn't even know Nexora was on the radar until the report hit my desk. I recused myself, Jason. I followed protocol. I didn't sabotage you. Your burn rate did. He turned sharply. Don't talk to me like I'm stupid. You've been waiting for this moment your whole life. Really? I crossed my arms. Because from where I'm standing, you've spent our entire lives making sure no one else ever got a moment. His mouth opened, but no words came. Instead, he looked away, jaw clenched. I didn't want this to blow up in front of the family, I added quietly. But I won't lie just to protect your ego. He exhaled hard. So what now? I get to report to you? Be paraded around as the failure while you get applauded? No, I said. You report to Marcus in technical integration. He doesn't care about our last name. He cares about results. Jason's silence stretched long and bitter. Then he said, I was 3 payrolls away from losing everything. Heather doesn't even know how close it got. I blinked. Jason, I kept thinking the next funding round would fix it, or maybe some miracle licensing deal. But the truth is, I was drowning. And you're the one with the lifeboat. Something in his voice cracked, and suddenly I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. We could have been building together this whole time, I said. Instead of competing for a spotlight that didn't matter. A soft voice broke through behind us. Heather. She'd followed us out and stood by the door, arms folded. I knew something was wrong, she said, but I didn't know how bad. Why didn't you tell me? Jason looked ashamed. Because I didn't want to admit I was failing, not to you. Heather's voice was steady, but sad. You weren't failing. You were trying to do it all alone. The 3 of us stood in silence, broken only by the distant sound of laughter from inside the house. Later that night, back in my apartment, I received another notification. This one stopped my breath cold. Subject line, press inquiry, internal conflict of interest at Titanova, from an anonymous tech journalist. Attached was a partial email thread, internal acquisition communications. selectively clipped, deliberately misleading, and the signature line of the leaker had been sloppily scrubbed, but not enough. Carla Nguyen. She'd sent the emails out of context, attempting to spin the narrative that I had influenced the acquisition to benefit my family. I immediately forwarded it to Monica with a simple subject line. Carla crossed a line. Minutes later, she replied, "I'm handling this. Prepare a summary timeline of your involvement. We'll shut this down properly." The next day, HR and legal launched a formal investigation. I was required to submit every email, memo, and meeting note tied to Nexora. I spent 8 hours assembling documentation that proved I had recused myself from all decision-making. Monica backed me every step of the way. Meanwhile, Jason, ironically, was pulled in to give a deposition. When asked whether I had influenced the process unfairly, he replied, "No, she followed every rule. Honestly, if it weren't for her team, Nexora wouldn't even exist anymore." It was the first time he publicly acknowledged the truth. That night, Heather called me. "Jason told me about the article. He's shaken. But he's also proud of you. He just doesn't know how to say it yet." I closed my laptop and stared out the window. Somewhere beneath all the ego and bravado, my brother was learning to see me, not as competition, but as an equal. Or maybe something more. Ever had a colleague try to weaponize half-truths against you? Drop a 2 in the comments if you've been there. The headline hit just after 7 a.m. Did Titanova executive sabotage her own brother for acquisition bonus? I stared at the screen, heart pounding in my chest. It was all there. Quotes pulled from emails out of context, old photos of Jason and me side by side as kids, and a twisted timeline suggesting I'd manipulated the acquisition to advance my career. And then, in bold, under a grainy photo of me at a tech conference, Brianna Harper, sibling or strategist. By 9 a.m., the story had spread to half a dozen tech blogs. Our in-house legal team was scrambling. My inbox was flooded with vague subject lines like checking in and crisis comms support, and then a message from Monica, conference room, 15 minutes, bring documentation. When I stepped in, the energy in the room was thick with tension. Monica sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 legal reps and the head of HR. A printed copy of the article sat face down in front of her. "I want to be crystal clear," she began. "We are not throwing you under the bus, but we need to respond, fast and fact-based." I nodded, already sliding a thick folder across the table. "Here's every touch point I had with Nexora. I recused myself officially. Parker handled the deal structure. Legal has email trails." The legal counsel flipped through the file, eyes darting between pages. "We'll be issuing a statement within the hour," Monica continued, "but I want you to stay out of interviews. Let us handle the media." "And Carla?" I asked. "She's suspended. Investigation ongoing. But based on this leak and her prior behavior, I doubt she'll walk away clean." It was a small comfort, but the damage was already done. My name had been dragged through the mud, my credibility questioned, and my family's wounds reopened for public spectacle. After the meeting, I stepped out onto the rooftop terrace, needing air. Jason called before I could even get a full breath. "Bree," he said without his usual edge, "I saw the article." I figured. "They made you look like some corporate vulture. It's disgusting." I didn't speak. He hesitated. "I know we've had our history, but if you want me to speak to the board or the media, whatever, I will. You saved Nexora. You didn't exploit it." I almost dropped the phone. "You'd really do that?" "I already have," he replied. "Heather sent me the article this morning. I forwarded it to my investors, told them exactly how the acquisition went down, and I'm happy to go on record with Titanova's legal team." I leaned against the railing. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "You didn't deserve this," he added. "You've worked too hard to be painted as the villain." Later that day, HR released a public statement reaffirming my ethical handling of the acquisition. Jason's testimony was included in the internal audit. Legal cleared me fully. But the moment that mattered most came not at the office, but at Grandma Eleanor's. She'd invited us both over for dinner. Jason showed up first, carrying a pie. I arrived 20 minutes later, emotionally fried but determined to see it through. We sat at the kitchen table, the air heavy with things unsaid. Then Grandma, never one for subtlety, poured coffee and said, "So, you two finally done trying to outmaneuver each other?" Jason gave a sheepish laugh. "I think I got outmaneuvered." I smiled. "I think we're finally figuring out we're not in competition." Grandma leaned back, satisfied. "Good, because this family is big enough for more than one success story." We spent the evening talking, not just about work, but about everything we'd missed while keeping each other at arm's length. Jason admitted that working under Marcus had been humbling, but also strangely rewarding. He was learning how to manage people, how to ask for help, how to listen. "I never thought I'd say this," he said, "but I like having structure. I like collaborating instead of carrying everything alone." "And I never thought I'd hear you say that," I replied, laughing softly. Then he leaned in, more serious. "And I get it now. What you do, it's not just marketing or corporate noise. You see things I miss. You make connections I overlook. Without your team, my tech would have died in a vacuum." For the first time, the validation didn't feel like a handout. It felt earned. As we were cleaning up, Jason hesitated by the door. "So, 1-year contract, but Marcus wants to keep me on longer term. Said I have potential as a division lead if I'm willing to train up." "And are you?" I asked. He smirked. "Only if I have a good mentor." "I'll send you reading material," I teased. He paused, then added, "Thanks for not burying me. You could have. Maybe you even wanted to, but you didn't." I met his eyes. "I didn't need to, Jason. The truth always has a deadline. It shows up eventually, whether we like it or not." He nodded, opened the door, and before stepping out, turned back. "Let's make sure the next time we build something, it's not a wall between us." Have you ever had to defend your reputation against a false narrative? Drop a 3 in the comments if you stood your ground.